welcome to the latest installment in our UXDX online series. I hope you're as excited as I am for the talks we have today, but before we jump into those, I want to give a very quick introduction to UXDX and why we host these sessions. So at UXDX, we have this mission that or view that the world is full of bad software. And what I mean by that is not that there's kind of bugs or things like that. I always use the banking example. I have an app with a digital first bank, and I have an app with a very traditional old-fashioned bank. And technically, they both do the same thing, but they're a million miles apart in terms of the usability and therefore which one I reach to and do more business with. So at UXDX, our mission is to help companies build an environment that can't build bad software. And why we say that is because we don't think it's down to the people or the motivation or the skills or anything like that. It's the environment that people are working within, the processes they have to follow, the structures that they're constrained within. So our goal is to help break people free from that. And how we do that is basically shifting from waterfall, or more commonly in a lot of organizations, water scrumfall, to really truly empowered autonomous product teams, ones that own the product from idea through to satisfied customers. Now that's really easy to say, but really hard to do in practice. And that's where we host all of our events and our main conferences, as well as these online sessions, to ask people to share how they're doing it, real case studies of what people are doing in their companies. Now nobody's going to cover absolutely everything, but hopefully you can learn from the bit of the process that people are sharing today and how you can apply that in your context as well. And that's where the questions come in. So as you're listening, think about any questions you might have, and please type those in so you can figure out any areas that you're unsure about. And the speakers will leave time at the end of their session to answer your questions. But that's enough about me. I'd like to introduce our first speaker for this evening, who is Valentina Caruso, who's the Chief Product Officer at Vitec. And Valentina will be talking about UX-ifying the C-suite, the 3 layers to transform leadership. So over to you, Valentina.
Thank you, Rory, for introducing me. And hello, everyone, and thank you for having me today. What I'm going to discuss together with you is how we can UX-ifying the C-suite. How can we bring a UX thinking that can transform the leadership? Before jumping into discussion, just a few words about me and my background. I'm currently working at Fixit, there is a company working on a digital solution for the beauty sector. But I have a background in UX research for different industry, like media industry, travel, education. So that's why, for me, UX is really important, and that was the mindset that I'm using when I was approaching this new role in the leaders group. So when I was starting being invited in the leaders meeting, as a researcher and as a UX, I was starting observing the need that leaders have. And any leadership, no matter if it's a big company or they're based in a small company, start with needs. Identify at least 3 main needs that we have. So first of all, before taking any important decision and jumping into a solution, we really need to understand what is the problem that we need to solve. So, and for who? How we can make this better? Which means that the other need that we have is making decisions that serve both the business and the customer. And at the same time, we need to connect people to that purpose. We need to align people. But this is also a challenge that we have. So the first challenge is really be able to transform execution in understanding. Small company and big companies have several things that they share. But still, small companies usually are closer to the customer, are closer to the people. So that's what leaders at least do. But the vision is very blurred. Sometimes the vision corresponds to the founder vision. And even though there's a willing of understanding the user, there is no user validation. And decisions are usually gut-driven. When it comes to a big company, we have metrics very precise metric, very precise KPI, but they do not reflect the user value. And still, executives tend to prioritize operation and strategy over the customer experience. So in both cases, the intent that we have with our vision doesn't really match the user value. There is validation, it can be fast or slow, but still, there is a lack of user validation in the long term. The second challenge that I had been noticed is the fragmented data. We don't really have a full picture of everything that we should consider when taking decision when it comes to product and strategy. For small company, we usually have lower data volume that probably it's easier to access because the ownership of people that own the data it's everywhere. So there is not this particular role. Several people cover several roles. There is a clear ownership. Even the tools that we use, like the CRM and other tools, usually are fewer and they are not integrated. So when it comes to the big company, on the opposite, we have massive data volume, but it's split across silos, across departments. And each department used to own the data independently. So they are not connected. We also have many tools for actually collecting the data, but even there is no full integration. So despite we have more advanced analytical skill for big company, we still take slow decisions because the data is fragmented. And this is something that we all share. So there is a lack of collaboration between departments. We don't own the full pictures when taking decisions. Rather, the decisions are often made without linking to what we are considering to do to the user journey. So we don't contextualize them. And the third challenge that might be not that significant is culture. And culture is extremely important because people are often tired. So the pace is relentless, change is constant. But what it happens is that a small company, employees usually don't understand the leadership decision. And that could also happen, by the way, also in the big company. So culture is something that is nice to say, but it's not really related to the way we behave, to the stated values, and to the company in general. So in the big company in particular, the executive prefers strategy over culture, despite everyone saying that culture really matters. So what we both share, small and big company, is that culture isn't really embedded in the daily work. So the execution is misaligned to the culture that is not really connected to specific decision. And in addition to that, we might also have employees that they're fearing to share an honest feedback. When, for example, there is a project where everyone is not really aligned on the direction that we're taking, it doesn't happen very often that people are willing to share their concern. So why we really know that culture is important because it's going to determine the way we're going to work on that specific project. So that's why when I stepped in my new role as Chief Product Officer, I actually didn't arrive with a roadmap. I rather arrived with a question. So I was asking, what if it's UX is not just for product? What if it's UX for leadership as well? What if it's a mindset that we need to adopt? Because UX is not just design. UX is the foundation that can help to reduce the risk to take wrong decision in building the wrong product. So UX brings empathy to really ground decision. Story, UX is storytelling. UX is what connects the dots when the full picture is not really clear with the data that we had. And UX, the mindset of UX, can also align the culture, the company culture, that will be therefore designed for a change in the process that will be more sustainable. If we go now deep into the detail. The first layer. So I call it layer because actually those three are not really steps to follow. So they are just layers, and each layers reinforce the next one. So the first layer is empathy, meaning that we have to start with understanding people and the need that they have. Because if we don't really understand people and we don't really understand the problem that we are solving, eventually we're not really understanding the business. And that lack of understanding is not just a minor detail. It can cost company millions to build the wrong product. An example of this is Google Glasses. I don't know if any of you remember when Google launched the first edition of Google Glasses in 2012. Actually, it looks very cool. So they launched the glasses with advanced tech. So they were having AR display, voice control, camera, but they were really missing the deep understanding of what is the use case that we're going to address, what currently the user were really needed. So they assumed that people wanted always be notified without even checking their phone. And the executives, the leaders, were actually thinking that the tech innovation novelty alone would have driven the user adoption. That was a huge mistake. And even the impact was huge because they only sold few units, approximately 150,000 units. And if we think that Apple sold 10 million iPhones just in the first year, you can imagine how the result was very poor. The public reputation was also something. So because people were very skeptical about using the Google Glasses everywhere, they were having privacy concern in addition to all the other frustration. So they start calling Google Glasses glass holes. So Google failed in really understand what kind of problem they were trying to address. And this was reflected in a loss of over 1 million for developing the tool over 5 years. So what happens is that product was shut down after a few years. And in addition to that, they lost an opportunity. They really lost the momentum for addressing AR. That was something that Meta then was doing. So later, they decided to adopt another approach that was empathy-driven. So they were focused on specific targets, on specific workflow. They were focused on a specific problem to solve. And Google Glasses will start to be adopted by DHL, General Electric, Boeing, with several positive results. So for DHL, they had plus 50% of picking speed, and then efficiency. But even for General Electric workers, so using Google Glasses were helpful to reduce by 50% the training timing. So in that case, they have a return on investment because they address specific and precise workflow. So Google Glasses was not a tech failure. It was a human failure. How can we therefore start understanding the right problem and avoid to address the wrong problem that can eventually be expensive? First of all, we have to start every meeting, try to understand the customer story. Just bring a customer story, the user journey. Try to make the user real. And don't be afraid to ask what kind of problem we're going to solve and exactly for whom, who are our persona. And try to also align everyone around that problem. Ask if we all agree with that. For executives, that means that we should see more often customers interviews, user interviews, so that we can really humanize our metrics. And that also means that if you address the user journey, if you have a customer story, you can even make the KPI connected to that, to the user friction. That's why when I was actually addressing this presentation, I was thinking that UX-ifying the leadership, the target for this presentation is not only people working in UX or in product team. So it's also leaders. So everyone has that shared responsibility. Everyone taking decision at least. The second layer is storytelling for connecting the fragmented data. So we know that when the data is captured, your strategy is not precise, and eventually it's going to die. And this is a problem when company that the majority of company actually have, with several departments not really be aligned on the story that they're going to tell or on the problem that they're going to address. An example of this is Nokia. So Nokia was a failure at the end because the team were not aligned. What happened in around the mid-2000 was that developers, for example, were focused on the internal operational system that was complex, outdated. They were just focused on technology. Marketing was already starting seeing some demand for touchscreen, apps, and simplicity. Product was comparing and see the friction, the user friction compared to the iPhone. There was already something at that point. Sales was, of course, prioritizing the legacy models because they wanted to meet the quarterly numbers. And executives made a mistake of believing that the brand loyalty would really have kept the user by Nokia. So the impact was absolutely huge because developers were starting losing interest, were starting developing less apps, fewer apps, and the users started being more frustrated. UX complaints were increasing, so the users were complaining about the difficulty in using Nokia. It looked also very outdated. So they had a market share decline from 49% to 3% in less than 5 years. They lost billion in revenue. And eventually, they were bought by Microsoft. How can we therefore align through the UX-driven storytelling? Because the storytelling is not just tell a story or explain the problem that we have, but it helps to align everyone around the problem that we need to solve. And how can we do that? So we need to start visualize the end-to-end user journey, visualize the real friction and pain point that the user is experiencing, and understanding this for each persona. So instead of discussing each department data, marketing or the customer supports coming with several tickets, we had to link each data to the user journey with specific personas, which also means that the leader should be invited to put themselves in the user shoes. Like, for example, we can have workshop together where you can have a kind of role plays where, for example, you ask the leaders to play a specific persona, and then they have to understand if they were that specific customer, what they would do. That brings them in the right perspective that is not just metrics and KPI and strategy to execute, but that brings us in a perspective where the user is still at the center of our decision. So the third layer is culture. Culture is what is going to determine the result and the outcome of our strategy. And the culture can also explain the 40% of the performance variance that we have in our company. So it's both the foundation for execution, but it's also a powerful predictor for the performance. If the culture is weak, then most likely the execution, the strategy execution will fail. If the culture is toxic, even the performance will suffer. So it's the leader responsibility to understand how can we actually support culture, because it's the invisible system that can really shape the way we work. Another example of how important is really having culture that is aligned to what we are doing is Google+. I don't know how many of us remember when Google launched Google+ as a social network to compete with Facebook. So It was a major investment. Google was also trying to have a forced integration with other Google products, but they really failed because for three main reasons. So they had a lack of psychological safety. So criticism was not really welcome. Teams that wanted really question about the strategy were ignored. There was a lot of rumor that people were leaving because of that. Even the user feedback was dismissed. The user didn't really understand the reason why they should have used it instead of using Facebook. And in addition to that, they were frustrated because they were forced to link it with other Google services. So what happened was also that the leaders didn't really listen to the feedback, and this was seen as an executive priority. So the prestige of the product was something that mattered more than the customers and more than the outcome. The result of this was again huge because Google Plus saw their low engagement, so 90% of user sessions lasted less than 5 seconds. Low retention, approximately 30% of users never made a second public post, and eventually it was shut down. And that cost almost 600 million spent on development and acquisition because we were not brave enough to challenge ourselves, because they were not brave enough to challenge themselves. There was also a financial impact because investors start reacting in a bad way. So they had a 6 billion drop in the market value for the parent company because of the platform failure. So as we can say, and as we can see, culture is a crucial factor to support our strategy and to support and align everyone around the strategical decision. That's why it's the leader's responsibility design meeting for clarity, for understanding exactly what we're going to solve, but even design meeting where everyone can feel emotional safe to share their concern. And leaders should encourage that critical feedback. At the same point, company in general should normalize learning. Either there is a failure, an example of failure, that should be shared. But at the same time, we should share a project where we start from the wrong problem, and then we were able to understand the customer to arrive to the final solution that was a compromise, but still it was better for the customer. So we have to support that kind of culture. That's why UX, it can be seen like taking care of a plant. So we have seeds that represent the empathy, but any seed cannot really grow if we don't have sunlight and water. There is a storytelling. And even more important is the quality of soil. There is the culture. So having UX empowered leadership is not just a role. It's not just something nice or something trending that we should have in our company. It's a choice that we will determine whether a company will be successful or not. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Valentina. Those, yeah, I definitely recognize some of those things in there, the different challenges, the lack of safety, and some interesting products that you chose as well. If anybody has any questions, please do post them in. But I'm actually going to start with one question for you, Valentina, and it's you gave some examples of failed products. Do you have an example of one that was successful?
Actually, Google Glasses was successful. It was successful later when they really understood that they were lacking the user understanding. They were addressing the wrong problem, which is also something that I think every company is trying to do. In my company, we are trying to implement empathy, storytelling for fragmented data, and culture through UX, because we're in the process of rebuilding our core functionality. This will be a huge project. So we have started implementing that UX thinking. We are still, I would say, in the initial phase, but we have already seen positive results in the empathy. So we are in the empathy, but also in the culture. There is still some work to do on the storytelling to connect the data, but we have been able to implement a process so far that has been able to align the employee around the right problem to solve while keeping the customer in the loop. So we also have reduced the delivery time, at least for the first part of it. So we are monitoring some metrics, but it seems to be promising, at least according to what also have been seen with different other products. Every product that addresses the users cannot fail. Then, of course, we have to address the business perspective, the business goal, but those are related. You have to start from the user first, and then you can understand how to run your business. But if you're not going to be helpful for your customer, there is no business.
Just on the storytelling bit, because it's also familiar, all the scattered data, and there's just different pieces of information all over the place. Who is responsible for collating that, or how do you get started with your story with a limited subset of that data?
I think that we should, actually, that's a tricky question, because it's where today we're also struggling the most. I think that what we are trying to do is really trying to have a workshop among the leaders group first, where we try to visualize the user personas first. So let's try to visualize this user persona. What is the workflow for them? What is the user journey? And then try to connect, we're trying to connect each department information around that. But it's not an easy task. I wouldn't say that we're good at it. It will still take some time, because especially for small company, we do not work in a very structured way. So, and the structured way also starts from the tools that you're using. Even the tools, as I also say in the evidence before, is disconnected, so they are not interconnected. So we have to start first from the basic, like having workshop where you can really visualize each department data in the user story, and then start building on the top of it with key metrics. But it's not an easy answer. I don't really have a strong answer. Not yet.
And so, yeah, that workshop kind of approach, that makes a lot of sense. But how do you get that buy-in at the C level? Because all of this takes a bit of time and effort, and they have to be bought in if they're going to be reiterating the problem and making sure that everything works through stories. Because from my experience, unless the C-suite adopt it, the culture doesn't change. Mm-hmm. So how do you get that C-suite buy-in?
I think that this what happened to me and was actually one of the reasons why I stepped into my current role. Of course, there are differences between big company and small company, but in both cases, if you work as a UX researcher or as a UX designer, or if you work as a product manager, your responsibility is collecting the user data, collecting every data that you can see. Just try to visualize, make it human, really. And don't be afraid of sharing with the company. So at Vitec, every month, we have the company presentation where each department is presenting what it's doing. That is also one of the reasons, or one of the ways how we're trying to connect the data. But at that time, when I was starting working as a UX product manager for this company, I was really trying to align everyone around the problem, around the user. I was sharing several video clips so that would get noticed. The leaders, since it's a smaller company, were really close. They were really understand that the user were struggling with this. So it was a way to make them closer and closer. And that can also happen in big company. So you still have the possibility to present to the leaders, right? So you have to be able to sell the user. You have to be able to let them visualize. And when I say visualize, it's metrics, but video clips, users interview. When you let your user or your customer speaking instead of you reporting the result, you make it more human and you get people closer.
Excellent. Well, that's a brilliant way to finish up because we're just at time now, but make it more human, bring your customer front and center. It's a brilliant way to finish. And thank you once again, Valentina.
Thank you too. Bye.
So we move on to the second talk of today. We have Simon Baumgärtner, who's the Customer Experience Manager, and he'll be talking about metrics that matter, turning feedback into UX gold. So I'd like to welcome Simon to the stage. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Rory, and thank you for having me. And good evening, everyone. Yeah, my name is Simon. I'm a Customer Experience Manager at EnBW. I'm working there since like 7 years. I used to work in the innovation management, and a few years ago, I changed to the corporate real estate management, where I developed or still developing metrics about UX and try to turn feedback into UX code. So today, I want to briefly tell you what corporate real estate management and UX get to do with each other. All right. First of all, a quick overview about our company. EnBW, or briefly EnBW, is Energie Baden-Württemberg. We are Germany's second largest energy provider with a total installed power of roughly 11,000 megawatt, thereof more than 50% renewable energy. And we also provide electricity grids. So the total length of grids or cables is about 150,000 kilometers. We supply 5.5 million B2C customers, not only with electricity, there are also other services we provide, like gas, of course, like everything around energy, but also charging grid infrastructure for electric vehicles, and yeah, stuff like this with mobility as well. In total, EnBW employs 30,400 people. That's still increasing. Briefly about our department, the corporate real estate management. We are 250 employees. We manage about 150 estates of EnBW. In total, 13,000 parcels. But we also supply, we also provide other services as our booking portal for business travel for the business travels, and also meeting rooms and the software for that. More to that a little bit later. But last year it was like 19,000 booked hotels through our portal and about 9,500 hours of meeting in our conference room. Yeah. So what do we do exactly? Our department is now, I would say, divided into several so-called value streams, where the first one is the workplace design. They take care about concepts, realization of workplaces, event management, also like furnishing the workplaces, of course, and also some strategic projects like Best Work, where the company figured out or tried to develop different concepts for offices after the COVID pandemic. So like, how is it best to work together, like hybrid? What happens if too many people come back to the office, and so on. Our second value stream is the customer-oriented value-added services. That's like services which are provided around the building for all the employees, like the core services, print center, digitalization or scanning of documents, the ID card offices for the employees' IDs, also stuff like mails and good logistics, and the archive, plus the, as I mentioned, the business travel management, and also the pool vehicles for our company. The third one, real estate operations, is probably the one you mostly associate with corporate real estate management. They take care of stuff like the facility management, keeping the buildings in shape, also the technical property management, and also stuff like damage reports, like everything around the building. Also topics like sustainability, so that we don't use too much energy and keep on track with the CO2 print. The security, as it says, it takes care of every security matters around the buildings and also events. They plan this and they also do the risk prevention. The two second value streams, project development, portfolio and asset management, they take care about like actual buildings and building them. So like, as I said, we don't have like, real customers outside the company. So our customers are either the employees or other departments or daughter companies. So if one of them, like the net provider, for example, has the demand for a new workshop for the apprentices, they come to us. The portfolio management checks, okay, do we have like either a building or a premise in our portfolio where you can either use it already or build one? And if you have to build one, you go to project development. They identify the exact needs, come up with a solution design up to like the final building. Briefly. So all of this can be put into a value chain as there are the value streams. So we take care from everything, like from procuring the property, basically until the utilization of the property, which can be demolition or sale, within a lot of steps in between, like the furnishing the building, operation, and so on. And as you can see, there are already some customers involved, which leads, of course, to the question, why UX in the corporate real estate management actually plays a role. How is it connected? Why is it important? So yeah, as I told, we have many employees, 31,000, which is almost like a small town. And therefore, we also have many contact points since we have a variety of different services. Also, the company strategy, as many companies, I guess, is towards like a more digitalized and more flexible company. And therefore, of course, UX is a big part. And all in all, good UX leads, of course, to process optimization, more employee satisfaction, and therefore efficiency and time savings. And that's why we want to be a customer-centric organization. Now you heard the why and who we are. Well, of course, the biggest question is, okay, how do we do it? Or how I at least try to do it. Yeah, so I developed like this or put this together. I call it something like the 4 pillars of UX in our department. The first one is also the speaker before me told is a cultural topic like education and enabling, because I think it's, of course, I already know this, but I cannot carry the whole department on my own. So it's definitely important to enable the people and to educate them that they get like the point of UX, that it's important to work with the customer in the center, and also maybe get an idea of which methods there exist. How do I do this? 2 years back, I developed this regular lecture format. It's called in English UX on Wednesdays, German UX am Mittwoch. There used to be this TV show, it was called Rap am Mittwoch, which was about hip hop. So I thought this might be a funny name. Maybe someone from the German audience knows it. Anyways, so every 2 months, I think, or every 1 month, it depends. I take like some topic of this whole world from the UX and try to do put together like half an hour to 45 minutes talks, not only like a deep dive, but also like just to make them people understand like, okay, what it is, how does it work, and most important thing, how can we actually apply it to our daily work and what is the benefit for us. So far, yeah, I did like, this is a couple of them, there's a little bit more, but yeah, so I started really basic with, okay, what is UX? What might be the differences with UX and UI, or what do they have in common? Because I think there is always a lot of buzzwords flying around, and this was also kind of a task to clear to clear that, so like there is a common definition of what is what. So the next step, I try to put it up kind of logically, was the topic of jobs to be done, so people can make like desired outcome statements if they want to start a new project, especially on the interfaces to our customers. And also, because the topic of customer journeys, like the view of a process out of the perspective from our customers, therefore more also later. Also, I talked about usability and this whole thing, what is design thinking, more than a buzzword, but yeah, just to like get an idea of what it is, the process as a designer, like how do you actually get from the problem to solution with different iterations. Also, I try to make the connection between our value stream organization and a customer-centered organization, or customer journeys in this case, and also more hands-on topic like how to do user testings. So yeah, we're still working on that format, and now we are also we got together with some other departments and try to make like a more a bigger format for also other employees, not only my department, so connect and to find common ground there. The next pillar of the four, which is also in the title, the KPI measurement. We worked quite a lot on that, or quite a long time, until we found like the perfect, which might not be the perfect KPI for our department. So in the beginning, there was like one questionnaire, and we started with doing the NPS, like the Net Promoter Score. So to see like, okay, how plausible is that you recommend our services to a friend or colleague. You probably know this. But we got the idea, okay, like, since we are the only real estate management in our company, this might not be the right value, since you cannot recommend us to anyone. So we came up with the customer satisfaction score, which is the division, the sum of all ratings divided by the number of all ratings, as our key KPI. And also not only the average one, but also the percentage one, to see like, okay, how in this case 76% voted us higher than 3 at least. Also, we do like a questionnaire for every value stream to see like, okay, how do they perform, how many people do answer there. We thought about like just taking the average of all of them, but as you can see, there are different amount of people answering, since not everyone got to deal with the portfolio management on a daily basis. So it would not be fair if you just take the average. On the right hand side, as an example, like you can see this questionnaire for real estate operations in this case. But what we try to achieve with this questionnaire is not only like the quantitative data, but also qualitative data. So we added this question, which is like, okay, how after every value stream, how could we improve our services so you would give us a better grade? And this is basically our main source of qualitative feedback from the whole company, besides customer interviews with single persons. And yeah, there you unfortunately I had to blur some stuff, but we also started now or running like it with AI to see like, okay, how many people are not happy with, I don't know, broken light bulbs, for example, and thereof we can actually see which next action steps we have to take as a department to increase the customer satisfaction. There you can also see, because we, as I told, we don't have only one building or one office, but we have quite a lot, where of them Karlsruhe and Stuttgart are the biggest ones. So we also try to figure out about which topic in which office the people answered how, to see like, okay, we have to improve. And yeah, as you can see already, there is a big difference between already Stuttgart and Karlsruhe. So there are different actions to take, different offices. Also, another KPI, which is more about the UX on itself, which we try or now trying to implement. Maybe you heard about it, the UX maturity assessment, where there are like 8 different categories by which you can rate how mature in regards to UX your company or department already is. Stuff like, okay, how advanced is your journey management? How are the skills? How is the culture with people and capabilities? Are there roles and processes which are working? How do you work with customer insights? Is there a steering mechanism? Do you take KPIs? Do you steer your department with customer KPIs? Which tools do you use? And so on. So yeah, if you do this like in a questionnaire or in workshops, you can also actually get like this letter and this rating. This is just an example. I hope we are a little bit further than just emerging. Yeah, where your department is at and where you have to maybe increase some topics to get one step further in the ladder. The third pillar we are working with, or which plays a big role, are customer journeys. So yeah, I told you that we have this value stream, but we also, of course, have like different smaller customer journeys, and it's always quite challenging to see like, okay, where do people actually have the first touch point with us? Is it like the intranet page, or is it the booking portal for pool cars and so on? And yeah, through which of our value streams they actually go. And of course, the emotional component, like how do they feel, and where can we improve that? We started a couple of years ago, like 2 years ago, to do this like in different workshops. On the one hand with the experts, but also with the customers. While our next challenge is the customer service blueprint. You might also have seen it, which is kind of an advanced version of the customer journey, less about the emotional components, but also the technical ones. Since we have quite an already advanced process management, we try maybe through this perspective to get together these 2 layers of customer journey and the processes, since like basically in my opinion the customer journey is just another perspective of a process. So it's like the visible perspective, the front stage, and where the customer actually interacts, while the processes kind of take care of the invisible activity or the support activities. Yes. Also, as I mentioned, the value streams and the customer journeys, in my opinion, work pretty well together, since value streams is a part of lean management, which is somehow also connected to customer journey. So value streams are a central element of it, and they show the end-to-end process across the whole value chain, while customer journeys really help to understand the customer needs, also it's a great tool for analyzing the experience along this value chain. So the one can contribute to improving processes that impacts customer experience, while the other one provides valuable insights for this process optimization. And of course, all three are interconnected and definitely can contribute to optimizing processes and also enhance customer satisfaction. Our fourth pillar, last but not least, is the implementation. So the first three ones were a lot about transparency, finding out user needs, understanding our company, understanding the processes, the value chain, the customer journeys. But yeah, we also have a lot of, through this transparency, a great backlog of actions to actually improve it, which can be simple stuff or small stuff, like changing light bulbs, maybe, for example, or repairing or fixing the heaters, but also, of course, more difficult stuff, which is about actual software development or bigger actions, definitely. So therefore, we use the continuous improvement process, which is this PDCA, the plan, do, check, act circle, where you plan different actions. Then while the doing part already includes this implementation again, then you check it, for example, by our customer service, while there can be also a continuous act. And with this, you definitely can improve your company step by step. Looks a little bit abstract, so I have this as our example. This is our central tool. We built it, I think, with Microsoft List or Power Apps, where we have like all the different actions, also a state, and also the goal. So we don't only use it for customer satisfaction, but also for our other topics as sustainability, digitalization, process optimization, efficiency, and so on and so on. So we have like one central tool for all our improvements. Yeah. Also, we work there with a prioritization, so we can see, okay, this is new. This is directly applicable. So yeah, we can actually work with a roadmap. And on the right-hand side, you see the different owners. So who in the end is responsible for also working on this improvement. Yes. We already have quite a good base for further steps, I think we're on a pretty good way to a more customer-centered organization, but we still have some stuff ahead, of course. So still we're working on a pretty good working or solid customer journey management system. So it's kind of everyone can see all the time, okay, where are the problems of the customers, and this needs to be really well connected with the processes. So the cultural topic, we have this really great platform in our company where you can sign up for all different kind of courses for free, of course. And there we're trying, or we're gonna provide together with another department such a learning journey, which is a different, like a several step course, including some lectures like this one, but also some more interactive parts like workshops. And also, of course, we need to buy in the leadership. Not that they are not already bought in, but I think they also need really to understand like how our value streams, where they are responsible for, are connected with our customer journey management. Yeah, so that's basically our 3 next steps, what we try to work on. That was it. I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you learned something new, maybe at least about the real estate and the connection to user experience. And now I'm looking forward to your questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Simon. Yeah, it was a really nice kind of tour through all of the different processes that you're doing. And to be honest, it seems like quite a lot.
It is.
My initial reaction. So yeah, I'll jump in with that as the first question, because you were talking about all of those, I can't remember the term you use, education sessions that you run.
Yes, yeah.
Education.
Wednesdays UX.
Wednesdays UX. So how much that looks like to me, a lot of effort has gone into producing those to make sure that they're high quality. So how do you balance, I guess, preparing for sessions like that versus doing the day job?
I mean, of course, I have some guys who help me out, like working students, which do part of the work. But I also think, since I also hold this kind of lectures on universities, you always have like the next one always gets a step easier, since you already have a great base or great pool at least where you can take some stuff from. But yeah, I mean, I try to do it really regular. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's also like, okay, if I see there is like a topic coming up, or which might be important, then I try to focus my time on that one before a new lecture. Yeah.
Excellent. And the other one that kind of burning question that I wanted to ask was the customer journeys and the customer blueprints. I love the fact that you're doing both of them, because they're kind of two different angles on the same problem.
They are.
But what I've seen in my experience is often teams will put a huge amount of effort into building out a library or building out a backlog of all of these kind of journeys and blueprints, but they struggle to get them kind of adopted in the day-to-day working of the organization. So how have you gone about, I guess it's the biggest fear of all researchers, that your research sits on a shelf and looks pretty.
Yeah, it is. And that's like basically that's my, I think, like the biggest question so far, since of course there are lots of different customer management tools. We also do use them, but the thing is, the people who actually have to use them, I mean, of course I use them, but the people who implement the actions in their daily work, they also have to understand them and to use them. So sometimes, I mean, in our company, I saw now that there are people working with Excel sheets, I think, but also because then it's machine readable, so you actually can work with AI on that again. But yeah, that's definitely kind of challenging that you have to get this somehow together. I think I work with something like Miro boards or our comparable tool to Miro boards. So people, because I think, okay, people can create them there on their self, or you can help them create them in different kind of workshops. They know this tool, they're used to it, and they use it on a daily basis.
Okay, excellent. And how do you, I guess the second half of it, like, so you're obviously trying to get it engaged by making it as easy as possible. How do you maintain them?
I mean, I try now. Basically, I have a group of experts around me, which are not technically UX designers, but they are engaged with the customers and with their value streams. And so I try to, like, on a regular base, to engage them, like, hey guys, please make sure that you and your team take care of those customer journeys. Yeah, that's how I try to do this. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a tough one, because people sometimes get so focused on the delivery, they forget to go back and update all the reference documentation.
Yes, they do.
Excellent. Well, that actually brings us to time. So I just want to thank you once again, Simon, for sharing your experience.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Excellent. That brings us to an end for today. But if you did like the concept of what we're doing, of bringing different stories from product, UX design, and dev together, because as I said at the start, we're all about trying to empower product teams, and that means everybody working together. Please do consider joining us in the USA in May in New York, where we'll have 40 speakers, 500 attendees, 8 workshops, or we'll also be in Berlin later that month in May, if you'd like to join us there. But if not, I just want to thank once again our amazing speakers, Valentina and Simon, and thank you for attending, and I hope you look forward to our next session. See you again soon. Thank you.